It began as an ordinary day inside the Las Vegas Police Department. Officers busied themselves with paperwork, responded to routine calls, and processed a night's worth of arrests. The usual murmur of conversation filled the air, punctuated by the crackle of police radios and the occasional barked instruction. Then, without warning, the atmosphere shifted. The glass doors at the front of the precinct swung open with a sharp hiss, and in walked a man whose presence brought the entire room to a halt. He was tall, impeccably dressed, and moved with unmistakable purpose. It was Donald Trump, the President of the United States, stepping through their front doors without fanfare, without warning, and without a single Secret Service agent in sight. Gasps rippled through the room like a shockwave. Officers froze, unsure of how to react. Some straightened their uniforms reflexively, while others simply stared, mouths slightly agape, unsure if what they were seeing was real. Sergeant Mike Carson, a seasoned veteran with over 20 years on the force, instinctively rose from his desk, his mind racing. The arrival wasn't scheduled, and there had been no alerts or notifications, none of the usual signs that came with a presidential visit. But there he was, unmistakably, right in front of them. Trump's gaze scanned the precinct, as if searching for something, or someone. His voice, calm and commanding, cut through the silence. "I need to see your chief of police. Immediately." Carson hesitated only briefly, then gave a sharp nod and gestured down the hallway. "Right this way, sir." Behind him, officers remained frozen, watching in stunned silence as the leader of the free world walked past their desks and toward the chief's office. Chief Angela Ruiz was in the middle of reviewing incident reports from the previous evening, unaware of the surreal scene unfolding outside her door. A disciplined, no-nonsense leader, Ruiz was known for keeping calm under pressure. But nothing could have prepared her for what happened next. A knock. Then Carson's voice, oddly formal, "Chief, we have an unexpected visitor." The door opened before she could respond, and in walked the President of the United States. Ruiz stood quickly, offering her hand with practiced professionalism. "Mr. President. This is an honor." But Trump didn't waste time with pleasantries. He reached into the inner pocket of his suit and pulled out a small, time-worn photograph. The edges were curled, the image faded from age. He placed it gently on her desk. Ruiz leaned in, curious. The photograph showed a young boy standing beside a uniformed police officer. The officer had a proud, protective hand on the boy's shoulder and a warm smile on his face. Trump's tone softened as he nodded toward the image. "That boy is me. And that officer, he saved my life." Carson leaned closer, stunned. Trump continued, "I never got to thank him. And now, I want to find him, or his family." Ruiz looked again at the photograph, her eyes narrowing slightly. There was something noble in the officer's stance, a quiet strength captured in the image. Trump's voice dropped, his usual confidence replaced with something more vulnerable. His name was Officer Daniel Brooks. It was 1964. I was 17 and making some terrible choices. One night, I was about to throw everything away, but that man stopped me. There was a moment of silence as the weight of his words settled in the room. Trump continued, "He didn't arrest me. He talked to me. Gave me advice. A second chance. I never forgot him." Ruiz and Carson exchanged a glance. This was not the kind of visit they had ever anticipated. "I owe him everything," Trump added, now seated, as memories from that night resurfaced in vivid detail. He described the moment, Las Vegas, 1964. A hot summer night and the kind of adolescent dare that could derail a young life. Pride and peer pressure had pushed him toward a reckless act, something illegal, something foolish. And just before it went too far, a firm hand had landed on his shoulder. "Kid," the officer had said, his voice steady and kind, "this ain't the path for you. You've got a future, don't throw it away." That moment stuck with him, a turning point hidden in plain sight. Now, all these years later, Trump had returned to this very city, to this precinct, with a mission. I want to do right by him, he said firmly. Chief Ruiz studied the photo one last time, understanding the gravity behind his request. Sir. I understand. And we'll do everything we can. The weight of possibility hung in the air. Chief Ruiz had cautioned that Officer Brooks might no longer be alive. Trump's jaw tensed, but his resolve didn't waver. Then find his family, he said firmly. Someone out there deserves to hear this story. Someone should know that their father, their grandfather, changed a life. Ruiz glanced at Sergeant Carson, who gave a subtle nod, already bracing himself for a long dive into decades-old records and dusty archives. We'll do our best, Ruiz said finally, her tone steady but cautious. Just know, it may take some time. Trump didn't blink. I've got time. Just promise me you'll find them. Hours later, Sergeant Carson was buried in the glow of a flickering computer screen, seated at a desk in the precinct's dim archive room. He combed through the department's outdated digital databases, navigating fragile systems barely holding together. Officer Daniel Brooks had become a ghost in the records, a name buried under years of bureaucracy and forgotten paperwork. Carson sifted through old arrest logs, scanned faded patrol reports, and even browsed through digitized newspapers from the 1960s, hoping for anything that could point him in the right direction. The work was slow, almost maddening, but then, like a light in the fog, he found something. A personnel file. There it was, Officer Daniel Brooks, badge number 4523. A full record. He had retired in 1985, and had passed away in 2013. Carson exhaled slowly, rubbing his temples. The name had finally surfaced, but it came with the weight of finality. He wasn't sure how to tell Trump that the man he came looking for was already gone. But just as he prepared to close the file, something caught his eye, next of kin, Emma Brooks. A daughter. Still listed with a Las Vegas address. Adrenaline surged through him. He rose from his chair and hurried back to Chief Ruiz's office, where Trump remained, staring at the old photograph like it held the key to another lifetime. Carson hesitated at the door. Sir, he began, carefully. I've got good news, and bad. Trump looked up, expression sharp. Bad news first. Carson took a breath. Officer Daniel Brooks passed away, 10 years ago. The words landed heavily. Trump's features stiffened, the reality visibly sinking in. And the good? Carson offered a glimmer of hope. He has a daughter. Emma Brooks. She still lives here in Las Vegas. Trump stood instantly, as if powered by a current of memory and emotion. Then we find her. Right now. Ruiz blinked, caught off guard. Sir, we don't even know if she'll, Trump cut her off, his voice resolute. She deserves to know what kind of man her father was. Soon after, Trump, Carson, and a small security team made their way through the quiet suburbs of Las Vegas. The car ride was hushed, filled only with Carson's quiet briefing. Emma Brooks was in her 40s, lived in a modest single-story home, and worked a regular job. She had never sought the spotlight and likely had no idea that her father once shaped the life of a man who would become president. As they pulled up to her home, Trump paused at the curb, taking a deep breath. This wasn't about politics, power, or press. This was personal. He stepped up to the door and knocked. After a long moment, it creaked open. A woman appeared, cautious, curious. Her eyes widened instantly, recognition spreading across her face. Mr. President, she asked, voice tinged with disbelief. Trump gave a small nod. Emma Brooks? She nodded slowly, gripping the edge of the doorframe. He reached into his coat and brought out the photograph. Your father saved my life when I was 17, he said gently. And I never got to thank him. Emma's breath caught. Her eyes darted from Trump's face to the photograph, then back again. My dad. Officer Brooks, she whispered, shaking her head. This has to be a mistake. Trump's voice was quiet, sincere. It's not. Your father changed my life. And I need to tell you what he did. Emotion welled in her expression. Without a word, she stepped aside, opening the door. Come in. Inside, the house was humble but warm, lived in, full of family memories. Worn-out couches, scattered magazines, and old photos framed on the walls. Trump sat, the photograph still in his hand, as Emma stared at it, trying to reconcile the story unfolding in her living room. He was a good man, she said softly. The best. But no one ever remembered him like this. Trump nodded, his voice thick with memory. He saw something in me I didn't see in myself. He stopped me from making the biggest mistake of my life. Emma sat across from him, holding back tears. He gave everything to this city. But when he retired, we struggled. When he passed, no one came. No news, no honors. It was like he was forgotten. Trump's jaw tightened. The respect he'd always held for law enforcement deepened with a quiet rage. Not anymore. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Why now? She asked. Trump met her gaze without hesitation. Because some debts should never go unpaid. She hesitated before speaking again, her voice cracking under the weight of memory. After he retired, we barely made ends meet. He never talked much about work, but I knew how much he cared, about people, about this city. But when he was gone, there was nothing left. No pension. No help. I had to sell our home just to survive. Trump sat forward, eyes intense. Your father didn't just change my life. He saved it. And I'm going to make sure his name is remembered. That evening, long after the sun had dipped behind the Nevada desert, Trump stayed on the phone. This wasn't about headlines. It wasn't about image or politics, it was about doing what was right. His first call was to the mayor of Las Vegas, insisting that Officer Daniel Brooks be formally honored for his service. Next, he reached out to several foundations that supported families of fallen or retired officers, making sure Emma Brooks would never again feel overlooked or forgotten. But still, something felt unfinished. He made one final call, to a real estate developer he trusted, and the instructions were simple: take care of her. The next morning, just after sunrise, Emma Brooks was startled by a knock at the door. When she opened it, Donald Trump stood there again, this time without the security entourage or media vans. Just him, holding a single envelope. What is this? Emma asked, her voice a blend of confusion and awe. Trump handed it to her gently. Your new home, he said. Emma's fingers trembled as she opened the envelope. Inside was a deed, to a fully paid house in a quiet, safe neighborhood. She stared at the paper, her eyes flooding with tears. Why would you do this? She asked, choking on the emotion. Trump offered a soft smile. Because your father would have done the same for me. 1 week later, the Las Vegas Police Department held a special ceremony to honor Officer Daniel Brooks. Word had spread quickly, and the press showed up in force, but Trump made it clear, this wasn't a media event. It was a tribute. Emma stood at the front of the gathering, flanked by Chief Ruiz and Sergeant Carson, as a bronze plaque was unveiled at the precinct entrance. The engraving read, Officer Daniel Brooks, 1940 to 2013. A hero is not forgotten. His kindness shaped a future. His legacy lives on. Emma stepped forward and gently touched the plaque, her eyes misting. Dad would have never believed this, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Trump stepped beside her, speaking to the crowd. Your father was more than a police officer. He was a mentor, a protector, a hero. A standing ovation followed, sincere and thunderous, echoing through the courtyard. After the ceremony, Emma stood quietly, watching uniformed officers pause by the plaque, reading the words, reflecting. Trump approached her once more. How are you feeling? He asked softly. Emma exhaled slowly, her emotions still raw. It's overwhelming, but it feels right. Trump nodded. Heroes should never be forgotten. She turned toward him, her voice cracking. You could have let this go. You didn't have to do any of this. He looked at the plaque, then back at her. Your father didn't have to stop me that night, but he did. That's what real heroes do. Emma reached for a tissue, brushing away a tear. Thank you. Not just for me, for him. Trump gave a quiet nod. Your father deserved this. Before leaving Las Vegas, Trump made one final arrangement. He funded a scholarship in Officer Brooks's name, dedicated to the children of police officers who needed support for education. When Emma received the news, she wept. Dad would have loved this, she whispered. He always believed in second chances. The first recipient was a young police cadet who had nearly dropped out of the academy due to financial hardship. When he was told about the scholarship, he said, I don't know who Officer Brooks was, but if he inspired the president, I want to be like him. When Trump heard that, he smiled, a real, unguarded smile. The legacy was living on. As his plane ascended above the Las Vegas skyline, Trump sat quietly in his seat, staring out the window. He whispered softly, Thank you, Officer Brooks. On the flight back to Washington, he sat in reflective silence. So many people had shaped his life, but few as profoundly as a man like Daniel Brooks, an officer who had offered compassion in a moment when anger or judgment might have been easier. That one choice, that simple kindness, had redirected a future. He thought of Emma. Of the officers at the ceremony. Of the young cadet now walking a new path. And he wondered, maybe true leadership wasn't just about commanding power. Maybe it was also about remembering those who gave you strength when you had none. About returning what was given. About gratitude. Trump closed his eyes. For the first time in a long while, he felt peace. The story of Officer Brooks quickly spread across the nation. News outlets aired the footage of the ceremony, and social media lit up with posts about forgotten heroes. People began sharing their own stories, about teachers, officers, mentors, and strangers who had made quiet but lasting impacts in their lives. The message was clear, sometimes the greatest heroes are the ones we never see in the headlines. Trump saw the public's response and quietly smiled. This wasn't about him. It never was. It was about a man finally being honored, a promise finally kept, and a legacy finally restored. Months later, Emma received a letter in the mail. It was from a young officer in training. Dear Miss Brooks. I joined the force because I read about your father. I want to be the kind of cop who changes lives, just like he did. Thank you for sharing his story. Emma held the letter close, tears welling in her eyes. Her father was never forgotten. And neither was his most important lesson: one act of kindness can change the world.